And there were even some other people that I knew, some of them athletes, some of them creators, and they were like, yeah, I want to try and do the same thing. And I actually like shared the contracts that I had written up with them to try and make it happen. And I really think that was a completely different model that was sort of invented right then and there. And it was totally new territory for both me and for Diamondback. Right. They had to look over this contract and kind of make changes to it and be like, okay, what works for us? We didn't know how it was going to work out. We didn't know what it was going to look like.
Yeah, because a typical contract before then for a professional rider would be, okay, the brand is going to give the athlete X amount of bikes. The contract is typically 12 months or 24 months. Here's a salary, and here's a list of deliverables. And typically that will be, you have to do, 10 races you said you were going to do. You have to appear in 5 photo shoot days, 2 video shoot days. You have to promote the brands from like a professional manner through your social media. Even back then, there was not much. The deliverables were pretty vague in a way in terms of like social media and YouTube. It was more like use your community to promote the product. It was what was like strict was you have to do this race, you have to do this calendar of events, you have to show up at the Otter, you have to do a signing session at Crankworks, and that was it. But YouTube was very foreign.
Yeah.
Like there was no, we have to appear for X amount of time in X amount of videos, and we have one video where you're gonna present the new bike, and that other video where you're gonna do a comparison in between those 2 bikes that you have. All of this didn't exist at the time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but almost any athlete contract now probably includes some language to the effect of any post you make, you're tagging us this way. Like there's social media language in there that wasn't before. So if actual social media performance isn't a part of it, it's mentioned somewhere.
Yeah.
In every athlete contract.
Yeah, totally. And even if you're a racer.
Yeah.
I mean, you see like now professional racer, like even if they get paid to win World Cups, they still have to obey to a certain, social media presence and a certain way to make sure there is the best like return on investment for the brands paying for the World Cup season.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even like 2 riders that win the same amount of races are going to get paid very differently based on their public appearance on social media. Whether, like personality, but obviously like numbers and how they present themselves and how many posts they do, how many engage they are with the community. That's got a huge impact on how much they're going to get paid, even if they win the same amount of races and have the same success across their career.
Sure. I mean,
which makes a ton of sense.
You walk around telling somebody to kick rocks and you have like a criminal record and stuff. It's, that now hurts you a lot more than it used to. You have to set an example. You have to present yourself well. And you have to have some ability to do social media now to do it for a living. You can still win races without any of that, but it might be way harder for you to make a living. That has changed. I remember at first there was more pushback from athletes like, oh, we win races and these people I remember, especially in the BMX industry, I don't know, some entire BMX team like quit because one YouTuber was sponsored by them. Like they all threatened to quit. But that was in the early days. Now anybody that's doing it is on YouTube or Instagram. Now we're all in the same boat.
I think everybody sees the value. Mm-hmm. Everybody, in some extent, wants to do it because there is a clear, you clearly get paid more as a professional rider if you have that following. It makes a huge difference in terms of like your career, your stability. Also, because at some point you get injured, at some point you're going to slow down because you're no longer willing to take all those risks. If you have a following, reinventing yourself to keep your career going is significantly easier, and you can maintain those relationships you've worked on with brands. Whereas if you don't have any of that, it's going to be very difficult. So right now, I would say everybody wants to have a successful YouTube channel. But the truth is, it's very hard to do. And not everybody can do it. It takes planning. It takes a lot of time. Also, it takes money.
Oh, yeah.
So it's easier to be successful at it when you're very good at your sport and you get paid already well by your sponsors, because maybe you don't have the time. Well, you can hire someone to follow you around at the races and make videos for you and edit them and do everything, post them for yourself. But it's much harder to do when you're like, up and coming, and you have to do everything yourself, including fixing your bike and booking your flights and stuff. If on top of that you have to do YouTube, then it's you're essentially doing 3 jobs at once.
It's very hard. It's a lot of work. But overall, it's a lot better for the people who are doing it, I believe. Because it used to be, you be a racer, unless you were at the highest level, you were living on the edge of existence. You could barely afford to, you were basically just bumming around from race to race. Even at some of the highest levels, people weren't really making a lot of money, which was insane. I mean, these are the people risking their lives. These are the people who are pushing the technology forward, giving these companies something to test. And they weren't really making the kind of money that would reflect that, especially when you look at their entire career arc. Because once they start getting a little bit older and they start taking less risks, or they've had their fair share of injuries, it's like you're going to go and work at a coffee shop, basically. Nothing wrong with that, but it's not racing. You're not doing the thing that you started to do. And so the people who had a little bit more business sense, sometimes they would start a company. Sometimes if they had a little bit more of an education or just good with numbers and words and stuff, they could work as a marketing manager or work for one of the bike companies. But many of them you never heard from again.
Well, especially since the sport is every sport nowadays is so competitive. But now you have to start so early, which means most likely you're going to sacrifice your studies.
Yes.
And your professional experience, which is very important. Like, studies obviously gives you like some type of, it's basically a certificate that say, hey, I've studied, I know how to do this. But professional experience is also very important. And if you want to be a successful racer, you can't really get that professional experience other than riding your bike. And yes, you like managing your own little team and then growing up to being a successful team, but that's only very, very few people. Most people just do very, I guess, they do jobs that are very flexible. So they can, work in the winter, maybe just work the morning so they get to train the afternoon, and then they can travel all summer to the races. But that's most people.
And as a result, they're not building up this future for themselves. They're pouring all their young years into something that might not hold a future for them unless they're thinking outside the box. And like we had mentioned yesterday, like Nico and Aaron are both doing really smart stuff.
Nico Mulali and Aaron.
Yeah, they're so smart and thinking towards the future. Like, okay, where do we go from here? And people who are doing social media, they are giving brands a reason to continue supporting them long after their race career. If you look at Eric Porter, if you look at Hans Ray, I mean, right?
Hans Ray is probably the best example.
Hans Ray is like the best example because, I mean, everybody loves him, and brands still have a reason to support him. And that would have never been the case before.
Because he was at an era where I've met Hans Ray a few times, but I was told, so the way you will pitch yourself to brand and project, you'll show up with a very professional deck with like, this is what I've done. Those are my numbers. This is how many impressions I have. This is how long my fan watch my videos. You got all that. Now all of us have it like moreover well done. But back in the day, in the 90s or early 2000, you would show up and be like, look, I've done X amount of covers this year, this amount of article, I've appeared this amount of minutes on national television, and I've done all of that, which is similar because obviously back then social media, YouTube didn't exist. So he would have that same approach. And now he's had a career for 40 plus years, which is incredible.
Yeah, that wasn't possible before.
No.
And so I think that overall, the next generation of athletes, if they leverage social media the right way, they have a career that could outlive their best, years as athletes. Because a 45, 55, 65-year-old ex-athlete is still amazing on a bicycle, and they have so much knowledge to share and stories and insight. They can add so much value to a brand for so many different reasons. And like in my case, without any brands at all, and I've never raced or did anything. Never done any of it competitively. But yeah.
So talking about that, like I want to dive a little bit more on the YouTube side of things and how you work. So do you have any sponsors? Like, do you get paid by brands like a retainer for an entire year or a 2-year contract?
Not currently. I had dropped, by my decision, 2 of my sponsors, which is Box and Slime. I didn't want any component sponsors or anything, so I could review whatever products I want. And then all I had was Diamondback. That was working out great. Then kind of at the early onset of the bike apocalypse, when inventory was, they had to drop me as well as a bunch of other athletes. And I totally understood why. And so at that point, I had no sponsors. And things kept working out, and I kind of liked having the freedom. And so since then, I've had no sponsors. Now, I've done like a single deal with Insta360 for some videos. I had this Unbikeable series that I did. I would do it again. I feel like cameras don't really interfere with anything that I want to be really impartial about. But being able to just get a load of weird products in and not ask anybody permission and not feel weird about it, it's just a freedom that I can't really give up. And because I don't necessarily need the income from those brands, and I can just get by on views, it works for me. Now, would I do some kind of deal in the future? Yeah, absolutely. It makes the business more stable, and there's certain arrangements that can work really, really well and be beneficial to both me and my audience and to my business.